Between the coastlines of Iran and Oman lies a stretch of water no wider than a marathon route. This is the Strait of Hormuz, a maritime choke point responsible for the transit of 20% of the world's daily seaborne oil trade. Moving that much energy requires ships like the Very Large Crude Carrier, or VLCC. A VLCC is an oil tanker with a capacity of up to 2 million barrels, often measuring over 1,100 feet long. Asian manufacturing hubs and European energy grids rely on the daily, uninterrupted arrival of these ships. A delay of even a few days threatens the stability of regional power grids and completely halts assembly lines. The modern global economy is physically dependent on the security of a seaway no wider than the distance between Manhattan and Stamford, Connecticut. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury. The coordinated assault targeted military assets and nuclear sites, resulting in the death of Iran's highest authority, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iran responded with an immediate asymmetric retaliation. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, broadcast warnings via VHF radio, banning all commercial passage. The IRGC is an elite military branch tasked with protecting the country's political system. Market reactions were instantaneous. Tanker traffic dropped towards zero as shipping firms suspended operations, and Brent crude oil prices spiked to a peak of $126 per barrel. Eliminating one political leader triggered the largest disruption to the global energy supply since the 1970s. Rather than declaring a formal naval blockade, which would be an explicit act of war, Iran utilized a sliding scale of disruption. This hybrid approach allowed the state to apply strategic pressure while maintaining a level of plausible deniability. The IRGC enforced this unofficial closure using targeted strikes. They deployed explosive sea mines in the shipping lanes and launched drone boats to strike the hulls of civilian merchant vessels. By damaging a fraction of the ships, Iran forced war risk insurance premiums to increase by 400% to 600%. For most commercial operators, these costs made transit through the strait financially impossible. While Saudi Arabia and the UAE attempted to bypass the strait using overland pipelines, these routes lack the capacity to replace the waterway. Furthermore, alternative ports like Fujairah have now come under Iranian drone fire. Iran bypassed symmetric naval combat by turning the logistics and insurance costs of global shipping into an impassable barrier. However, the blockade contained a specific geopolitical exception. While Western tankers were turned back, Iran selectively permitted Chinese-owned and Russian-linked vessels to pass through the strait unharmed. This selective passage is tied to a draft bill in the Iranian parliament. The legislation seeks to levy heavy transit tolls and taxes on any merchant ship using the waterway. These transit fees come with a critical requirement. Iran demands that all payments be settled in Chinese yuan, a move that intentionally avoids the U.S. financial system. By combining selective passage with alternative currency demands, Iran turned a regional military choke point into an economic weapon aimed at the U.S. petrodollar. These economic effects are most acute in Japan. Relying almost entirely on imported energy and a weak yen, the Japanese economy is uniquely vulnerable to a sustained halt in shipping through the strait. This energy shock transmission loop illustrates a cascading process. Surging energy costs drive up logistics, feeding into systemic global inflation. This forces central banks into a defensive posture with an impossible choice: raise interest rates to combat inflation or allow their currency to collapse. The crisis has also crippled local energy production. Qatar lost 17% of its natural gas output after Israeli strikes targeted the South Pars gas field, a facility shared by Qatar and Iran. Closing a localized geographic bottleneck ultimately results in a systemic, worldwide deterioration in the foundational terms of trade. In response, France, Germany, and the UK have threatened to trigger the UN's snapback mechanism. This would restore all international sanctions previously lifted under nuclear agreements, totally isolating Iran from the global financial market. Iran rejected the legitimacy of the snapback process, threatening further escalation if the sanctions are applied. The result is a dangerous diplomatic deadlock with no clear off-ramp. Operation Epic Fury demonstrated that overwhelming traditional military force is insufficient to secure the global economy's most vital artery. In modern hybrid warfare, Crippling a superpower is achieved by placing a lock on a 21-mile door and changing the currency on the price tag.